What's up, guys? Welcome back to the S3 Magazine podcast. Today, we are here with the boys from Mechanical Advantage Racing. So let's talk about race cars.
Yeah, you're going to come right out the gate cussing.
All right, so today we're here with Kendall, Grant, and David, as I said in the intro, of Mechanical Advantage Racing. Give us a little bit of background. What is Mechanical Advantage?
It mostly just a group of total idiots building race cars.
Fair enough. So
As
do you
it should
run?
always be.
Yeah. So what do each of you drive?
I don't drive because the Subaru's mostly broken. But if I was driving, I'd be driving one of many Subarus.
That's the most Subaru thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, the most Subaru thing ever.
Hey, you know, I'm going to go ahead and completely take this onto a tangent immediately.
I have 3 Subarus.
No. I want to point out, you know, at Speedring, when you did all the pictures of our cars,
Right.
Grant and I, we had a rough weekend. Grant was having boost issues. I was having dry sump issues. The cars weren't running right. And there was nothing more rewarding than having the cars on track for a photo shoot while no one paid attention to the winners on the podium because they were all wondering why the 2 cars that were not performing well were getting all of this hype. And I just want to point that out, that's what we built cool looking cars and we do our best. Sometimes it doesn't go well. But at the end of the day, I mean, they're getting the attention that we wanted.
That's right.
Flex on them.
All right,
Anyway,
Grant, how about you? What do you drive?
Oh, I drive a 95 K24 Turbo Miata.
Okay, Miana.
Most of it's cut out, but it's still there.
And then I drive a 93 240SX with an SR20 on it.
That's
Oh, yeah,
up
so-
Hunter's
Well,
alley.
it's not on it, it's in it. I don't know why I said that.
I wish
It'll be
mine
done.
was in it. Mine might as
It'll
well
be.
be on top of it because it's not doing any good sitting where it's sitting. So, you guys, yeah, you would think, especially the 240 guys, you would be like, oh, K Miata, not so much the Subaru, but like K Miata, SR20 240. These are drift guys, right? No, you guys are all time attack all the way, right?
In different classes, yeah.
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 Yeah, all spread out
that
throughout
said-
the classes.
We're all
said,
engineers, so we want the cars to perform well, even though they may not at times.
Yeah.
But purpose
If
built.
they're running right, damn it.
That's right.
That's how it goes in racing. Sometimes it doesn't go how you plan.
So the Subaru, it runs unlimited, right?
Yes, but technically it's like a shade above a track mod car. It's similar to Grant's. We elected to bring Grant down a class, and the only thing that's holding mine in unlimited at this point is the flat bottom. You know, so it does run unlimited, but I think it'd be more competitive in track mod. I don't want to declass it.
Yeah.
Like, walk us through, I guess, all the, the main highlights of the build or whatever, just to give people an idea of how radical this thing is. And you mentioned, like, at the beginning, like, just jokingly, oh, we're just idiots that mess with cars. Like, not true. You work at Borg Warner.
Yeah.
I know, Grant, you still work at Honda America, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and then David is at Performance Electronics, so David did the mil-spec wiring harnesses in the cars as well. So it kind of has taken all 3 of us to make each car where it is.
Yeah, you guys are like mad scientists. So, all right, what's done? It's sequential, right?
Yeah, so the Subaru has an X-Shift sequential in it. One of the things that I've been trying to get working was a home-brewed paddle shift setup. And a lot of the functionality that has made that possible was the Performance Electronics ECU that David wired in there. So that has paddle shift, tables that you can tune. And then I kind of did what you're saying, the mad scientist. I made it or used an air compressor from an air suspension setup in a homemade air tank, powering a McMaster car air cylinder through some simulator paddles. And it's almost there. It'll work on upshifts, just not downshifts yet.
We got to add a blipper on the downshifts.
So it has the blipper. It's not blipping enough. Currently at 30% throttle, and I think we need to get it up to 60% throttle for a rev match on the downshift, and then it'll work. But yeah, so it's got the sequential and then a built engine. This year going to an IAG closed deck setup, which will be interesting because if anyone has talked to me in the pits, I'm like usually the anti-closed deck person.
Right.
But IAG has proved that they work through Sally's car and like half of the Subarus out in the field, while what I've used is sleeved, which is slightly older and very strong combustion-wise. You're not going to split a cylinder wall, but it weakens the main. So I want to fix that because that's where a lot of oiling issues have come from in my car. So go into that. 2.3 liter D-stroker, IAG sleeved short block, all assembled with short block. They've done all the machining, fire ringed with their, I think it's called the fire lock gasket. So it's like counterboard and you don't use a head gasket anymore. It's basically a crush washer.
Yeah.
So that's pretty wild. Of course, built heads. I won't dive into those. And then dry sump and the rest of the stuff a race car would have. Fuel cell, roll cage, race seat, all that good stuff.
So, all right. So before Borg Warner, you worked at Honda, right? That's where you and Grant became buds?
Yeah, so I was there a year before Grant, and I hired in with two other guys, Nick Gary and Nick Mitchell, and they had started kind of helping me build towards the Grid Life event, I guess. That was my target. After seeing how crazy Grid Life South was, that was what I was targeting. And so we started building, then Grant hired in and started helping. So the first event we got to go to was the four of us.
Okay.
And at this point, out of those original four, Nick Mitchell and Grant are the only ones still there. And then the team's kind of adopted a few more from Honda as well.
All right. So, how are you such a diehard Subaru guy if you're working for Honda?
It's a great question.
You're like, damn, these Hondas are pretty reliable.
You know what?
Subaru.
I don't like it.
I need problems.
Here's what you got to understand. He makes money off building engines.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you got to find an industry where they're constantly blowing up.
The greatest part about that was at PRI this year. That's when I was talking to the IAG guys, and JJ is the owner of IAG. We were at the JE Pistons booth, and they asked the exact same thing to JJ. Like, if these are so unreliable, why the hell would you try and make a business off of this? And then he just asked, how many pistons did we buy last year? And they said something like 40,000 pistons. It was something that literally blew my mind. They were the largest consumer that JE had sold to for an aftermarket shop. This is literally a Subaru shop that's now got a 200,000 square foot facility just building engines nonstop. There's a lot of money to be had because even the best engines will fail in that market.
Yeah.
That said, Grant's car kind of drives me nuts because he picked a junkyard block up for $100, and I told him we should measure when we tear it down. Let's bolt it together and let's see what the clearances are on this 200,000 mile block. The tolerance, or for bearing clearance, you want it within a few 10,000ths for a blueprinted block on all the mains and stuff. His 200,000 mile block was basically as good as I could get a freshly machined Subaru. And that was completely the most eye-opening thing, where it's like the worst case scenario for a Honda is the best case scenario for a Subaru.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've messed with Hondas, and that was always like the wisdom or whatever is like, don't touch it. Just put it in the damn, swap it in the car, and don't touch it until it breaks. And I did that. I got a CRX with a B16. It's been in there for 10 years, and I have no idea what's in it, what I got. I just got the motor, stuck it in, it's still going.
He
It
doesn't
leaks
even know
from
what clutch
everywhere.
is in
But
it. I've asked him. I'm like, yo, this is definitely a heavy aftermarket clutch. I'm like, what is it? And he's like, I don't know. They told me not to look.
Didn't look. Hood's
Yeah.
been shut down since '94.
All right, so I guess Grant then. What's like whatever the similar background on your car? How'd you end up with the Miata? I know why you ended up with a K series in it, like they're awesome. But like, were you always a Miata guy or what?
So my first truck was like a Dodge Dakota V6 pickup truck, so it wasn't a lot of fun, but it hauled a bunch of chainsaws and tree limbs and made some money in high school. But then when I went to college, I wanted something sportier like I'd wanted for my first car, but I got that one for my parents got that for me, so I couldn't really argue with that. But I went and a couple of my dad's friends were like, yeah, Miatas are a great little car and they got tons of aftermarket support. You can pick them up for cheap. And I started looking. I found a good one in Indianapolis, picked it up, and I drove that for 5 years, and then met Kendall, helped him for a year with his race car, and then I said, I want one. So that got all torn apart, and all the parts were sold off, and I was trying to figure out what engine to go in it, and that's right around when K Miata started making their products, and I was like, this is an awesome swap. So that's how I ended up going that route.
Makes sense.
Grant's
All right.
Miata was super clean though, and it pains almost everyone in our little local friend group that he cut it up.
Oh, it was clean when you
was-
started?
Oh, so clean.
I agree. Cleanest Miata I think I've ever seen.
It was so nice.
Now it
You
matches
race car
my
guys,
God.
I'll never understand. Jackie Ding was the same way. It was like a 30,000 mile S2000 before he started beating the piss out of it.
That
Yeah.
Like-
sounds about right.
I mean,
I'll never understand you race car guys.
I get it, because after we did that Type R thing last year with Motovici, I remember after Grid Life Midwest, like I was kind of a nervous wreck, man, because I didn't know Gingerman. And Gingerman's kind of a sporadic little track if you don't know it's short. It's not like Road Atlanta where you kind of get you break it down in sections and get your bearings. Like they threw me out there and I shouldn't have been out there when they threw me out there because there were guys that were way faster than me and way more experienced. And the whole time I'm just like, crap, where the hell am I? I'm trying to watch from here to figure
We
out
should
which
record
direction.
the audio of Wooly
Dude.
Picard.
It was nerve wracking. So but by Sunday, I remember after the last session, I was sitting there taking a leak, and I was like, "Crap, this is how it happens, man." Because all I want is one more session. You know what I mean? Because by the time it was the last one on that Sunday, it was finally starting to connect and make sense, and you were improving and realizing you could push, harder, and then it was like, oh crap, I'm hooked. I felt it for sure. And that's kind of what I want to do with the CRX, maybe. But I feel like your race car has to be on the street. Like that's always, since I was a little kid, I was like, my dad vintage race, and I was like, but Dad, why don't you drive this thing on the street? He had an old 356 911 or 356 Porsche, and he was like, well, it just doesn't make sense anymore to have it on the street. I'm like, yeah, but it looks awesome. It should be on the street. Well, when you grow up, you'll understand one day, and I'm 40, and I still don't understand. I just feel like it's got to be on the street. But, all right, so, David, it's an S13, right?
Yeah.
With an SR20, how the hell did all this happen? How long have you been doing it?
All right. So when I was 16, I was looking for my first car, and I really wanted a DSM because I'm from Cleveland. So I grew up. I grew up going to the shootout, and all the older kids, like a few years older than me, because I graduated in 2012. So all the kids a few years older than me all had, I got a 1G Talon with a Busher package and a Shep Trans, and it was just normal to get on the highway and just like rip all-wheel drive burnouts at like 70 and like, whole set HX35. We had a joke. There's like a big Puerto Rican community that did DSM tuning, and they'd be like, I got a raccoon in the block, but it still makes 500. But just they were dirt cheap, and I really wanted one, and my parents didn't want me to get a stick because I didn't grow up with a lot of money, so like whatever car I had, like kind of had to work for the family too if like my parents' car broke. So my uncle owned a Mako, so he was constantly like getting salvage titles, and he knew I was like into the rice burners, as he said. And he got a 3G V6 Eclipse in, and he just thought like, oh, David,
he's gonna love this.
So he talked my parents into letting me have it. I was just stoked that they were gonna let me have a 5-speed. Yeah. So I took it. I was like, you know what? It's not a DSM, but it's a 5-speed. It's better than nothing. Yeah. So I drove that for like a year, and then at 17, I was saving up a little more money to maybe buy like a real shitty DSM, and then I could still have my car that got me to work. And I just wasn't finding anything. And then this car came up on Craigslist for like, this was 2011 for it was $6,000. It was a S13 with like 150K miles on it. It didn't run, but it was bone stock, and it came with like TN coils, FN01RC wheels, an SR20 on the pallet from Japan, and just I shit you not, a 3-page list of parts, like on all good parts, like SPL suspension parts, just you name it, just a huge, like it was like 19 grand in parts. Dang. And I contacted the guy, and he was like, oh, I can't like meet you right now. I'm in my Florida home. It was some rich kid who like bought all these parts, wanted to build a car, and didn't put anything together. Yeah. So I just went to this, like his dad owned a bunch of property in Cleveland. It was like stored at some random warehouse. So I never met the people. And like, I wasn't 18. So my dad like met the guy's dad and transferred the title for me. But I ended up talking him down to $3,000, and I traded him for like 2 12-inch subs with like a crazy amp.
Oh my God.
And, so I got like a decent like S13. Oh, and all it needed was brakes. Like he said it had like a brake system failure. He let the front calipers get so bad that they were halfway through the rotor, like to the fins. So all the fluid, so the piston came all the way out, all the fluid leaked down it. So I just like reset it, and I drove it around for 2 weeks, and then I was like, I'm poor. I'm just gonna strip this thing down at night. So that's how I ruined that 240.
That's cool.
Yeah. Dude, that gets me so hyped. So, like, if anybody's listening don't know, I have an S13 as well, kind of the same situation. I worked for Advanced Auto Parts at the time, and this guy comes in, and he's like, yo, do you know anybody looking for, like, a 240? And I'm like, well, what kind of 240? I mean, there's, like, Volvos, there's, 240Zs. Like, what are we talking here? And he's like, oh, it's just an old 240 SX. And I'm like, okay, well, give me some background on it. And he's like, well, I've had it practically since it was new. In 2005, I took the head off for whatever reason, and I let it sit, and it's been sitting on my parents' farm ever since. All I did was change the shocks once, and like it's completely original. So he sold it to me for $300. I did the same thing. I picked up an SR20. None of it is in the car. I've been working on it for a year, and it's all in pieces. But I got like Woolwood brakes, all ISR, like suspension components. The engine came with like a bunch of stuff that was imported with it from Japan. And it's so sick. So it makes me hyped that somebody like else is in the S13s. That's not a drift guy. Like somebody's not trying to convince me to beat the hell out of it. Granted, I will on the street. But I'm not gonna go bashing it into other doors or anything.
I think there's plenty of Grip S chassis starting to get a little more famous. I mean, the Hammerhead from Australia or New Zealand. Yeah. You guys know what the car I'm talking about?
Yeah. I don't think so.
The MCA Hammerhead, for the longest, I think for like a good few years, it was the fastest time attack car in the world.
Oh, yeah, that's what opened my eyes to 240 time attack. I didn't know many people really did grip 240s, but then that thing started setting records and everything. It was crazy.
Yeah, I didn't know people did it either. Who is the dude at Grid Life South? What's that?
Who at Grid Lifestyle?
Who is that dude in that green S13 hatch at Good Life South that just ate the wall the last day?
Ooh.
Do y'all know him? Did y'all see that? It was gnarly.
I didn't see it.
I think he
Oh,
like
wait.
I think he like lost the brakes right before the kitty litter. I don't know what turn that is because I'm not a racer, but
10.
yeah, he like I don't know if he tried to save it or something, but he like basically folded the car in half. Like he hit the wall and it just like
Is that the
yoink!
car that was like trailered right next to us to where we were with the Type R?
They trailered it up beside the Type R.
Yeah.
It was bad. I felt so bad for the dude because that thing was mangled. But anyways, what were you saying?
So
Go
Go ahead, Kendall.
I was gonna say that 240 when it was like dominating the Hammerhead. That's when was it Mighty Mouse? That Honda as well was killing it. And those were two cars that, just like Grant was saying, I wouldn't have thought. And I don't. What you see, I guess, as the status quo, which I do think is kind of like a Subaru or an Evo here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you don't see them at work. Like they don't quite. I don't know what it is on a world level that they're just not quite there. It is the other chassis, these weird ones like Willow Young's, the cars that aren't necessarily the first thing you'd think of to be the fastest time attack car. That's what is doing it.
Yeah.
I've always wondered, like, since none of us are like pro racers, and I'm very new to this, like if you took the people that really push those front wheel drive chassis to the max, like if you took the same amount of dedication, money, and time, and you put that into like a rear wheel drive chassis, like would it be faster, or is it just the fact that some of the most dedicated and talented individuals in North America happen to start with front wheel drive?
Yeah, well, I always wonder that too. And it's like, I think that the Honda community kind of pushed through those barriers to make Hondas what they are. Because, like, there was a time, at least in my recollection, where like 2003, that kind of era, like Hondas were kind of like, come on, man, aren't you tired of getting your ass kicked yet? Like you said, DSMs were just eating them up and all that, but like, dude, people love their Hondas and they kept pushing and they kept building, and then they would break through and they'd find out, decay or whatever, and they'd figure out the next thing. And I just think that the Honda Nation will not let those things die. And because of that, and because they got good bones, and because you can swap, they're so swappable and everything, like you can just do any damn thing with them, man. I mean, what the hell did Will run at Road Atlanta? Didn't he set a record there at like 118 or something like that? Something just stupid. Something absolutely ridiculous. But I used to work at Panos Racing School in like the early 2000s. And dude, like he's closing in on Le Mans car times.
Yeah.
Freaking insane. Now, granted, I know it's all perfect condition, one car on track and all of that, but Jesus, man, it's insane. I love showing that to like my dad's, my dad and his buddies are all ex-vintage racers or current vintage racers, and they just cannot believe that I'm doing that. It's insane. How long have you guys each been driving? Like how many years have you been doing this?
Kendall, you want to start?
Yeah, my first track day, 2014, 2013?
Okay.
No, it would have been 2012. And it was in my 05 STI, right before I got Slumdog. And our college had a racing team. So like they pay for the drag race events, like $30 a driver here and there. Mm-hmm. And then they allowed us to go to a road race event, like an open lapping, and they paid for it. And why wouldn't you go if they're going to pay for it? Worst case, you go home. And well, it's kind of what Wooly was saying earlier. You get there and it's like, oh crap. I can't stop now. Like, I got the bug. And then as soon as that happened, I put that car up for sale because I knew an 05 STI was too expensive to be tracking. At least I was like 18. So I sold it and got Slumdog and swapped it. Had a cheap chassis with a fast motor in it and started there. And so I wouldn't say I competed that long, but really probably 3, maybe 4 years of true competition, and then a lot of hobbying and HPDEs with instructors back then.
Okay.
That's cool. What about you, Grant? How many years in are you?
Ever since I bought that Miata, it was kind of, when I bought it, it was kind of set up for autocross. That's what I used it for. Went to, autocrosses here and there, but my actual first track experience was on my sport bike. I just had a Suzuki GSXR 600 and went out with I met some guys in college that tracked their bikes. I bought a suit and some boots, and they took me out for my first track day, and then I was pretty much hooked as well. It's a little bit of a different experience laying down on the pavement, going around the turns, but once I got behind the wheel of a car on the track, I fell in love with it. Just that it's a different sensation of the grip level going around a turn that kind of hooks. The sport bikes have the acceleration and the straight lines and braking and everything, but that grip in the turns is what really, tosses all your guts to the side and makes you hold on to that wheel for dear life, and that's what hooked me.
So, question, not being a motorcycle person, which is more, do you think cars are more exhilarating? I would feel like motorcycles, you're on the edge of death a little more, like you don't have protection.
I think the racing we're doing right now is a little more exhilarating because we're freaking going out there and trying to set times. But all the motorcycle track day stuff I did was kind of like hobby HPDE stuff. Okay. So I was not necessarily pushing my comfort level because the consequences on a bike were so much higher. You see somebody mess up a braking zone, and instead of locking up a front tire, you only have one. So if you lock up your front tire, you end up on the pavement and sliding into the grass 50 feet.
Right.
So you end up missing a few days of work at Honda.
Yeah. That happened to a friend of ours.
Oh, really?
So, but
it's a great video.
It's a video. I love that.
It's one of our other buddies has the video, and he makes the braking zone, and you see David come flying by doing a nose wheelie and just blows the corner and cartwheels off the track.
It makes you cringe.
It's cringy, but also hilarious knowing that he's okay.
Yeah. So, David, you're newer, right? I mean, you're younger. I'm assuming you're newer to the time attack stuff. How long have you been doing it?
So I have actually not driven my car on track yet. I started in 2016 driving FSAE, so the Formula Student for our college. So I started driving those cars, and I got a little bit of seat time doing that, and then some of the alumni to kind of help us train up let me drive their FRS at some autocrosses, and I did decently well at my first autocross there. And then after college, while I was finishing my car, because my car sat all through college, I just didn't have money to do anything, didn't have time.
That's why they make credit cards, man.
Yeah, I know. I mean, hindsight.
No, don't do that. That's what I did.
Hindsight, I would have saved all my money in college, graduated, and bought a C5. But
it takes people their whole life to learn that. That's why old people drive Corvettes.
Oh, by the time
these guys are like, I'm gonna beat them with a Subaru. No, I'm gonna beat them with a Case Miata. By the time y'all are 55, you're like, you know what? Fuck this. I'm just gonna get a vet.
By the time I'm 30, I'll be that dude with probably a C6 or a C7 out there, just being that guy.
Yeah.
But after school, I was graduated for about 2 months, and I bought a shifter cart because I have a fabricator at work who's kind of in the racing world, and he was like, man, if you want, because I was thinking about buying a Tomo's fit off of him.
Uh-huh.
And he was like,
okay,
you know what? If you want the highest G per dollar, seat time per dollar, buy a shifter cart. It'll beat the shit out of you. You're pulled many G's in the turns, and it'll teach you how to drive. So I bought a shifter cart, and I just started driving that around. I've been driving that for like 2 years. I'm on my second cart now, and then also that first year I got out, I bought a sim. So I really just tried to kind of. It sounds silly when you're like, oh, well, why are you caging and building this full-on car for you haven't even been on track yet? I feel like I have a decent amount of practice. I'm, obviously not arrogant or cocky. I'll probably not win anything this year, but I'm not scared to be on track. I'm just, inexperienced.
Yeah. You say you're not
we all
scared.
gotta start somewhere.
Like, you say you're not scared. Like, what do you guys go through mentally, like, when you're getting ready to go out on track? Like, I know you guys have, a decent amount of experience now. Like, do you still get freaking scared or anxious or butterflies or any of that kind of feeling?
That's one of the problems that it comes with building your own car.
Well, I'm gonna put on top of Grant's statement there. That's one of the problems of building your own car and getting help from other people building your own car. Because I know there's been, like Grant was there at Midwest, like the first season we campaigned mine, and we had to quickly make some suspension changes. And I'm sitting in the driver's seat while they're finishing aligning the car. And Grant taps the roof and he says, "You're good to go." And then Nick Mitchell's on the other side. And I'm like, "Guys, did you remember to torque the trailing arms when you did that?" And Grant's like, "Oh, of course." And Nick is like, "What?" That has haunted me every time I've gotten in my car. Like, I've double checked stuff, but you never know.
Yeah.
Thank God they've always been torqued. But yes, that is what gives me kind of the heebie-jeebies, I guess, going out there, is when you build your own car, you just maybe miss something, and we're all human, so it could totally happen. That's exactly why why this engine's coming out right now.
To elaborate on my statement, I'm more scared of driving my 240 at 120 than I am at my shifter cart at 70.
Really?
Yeah, because the shifter cart, it's simple, and if something happens, you just kind of get ejected off of it. Whereas, like, the car, it could catch you on fire, and fire scares me more than anything else. Yeah. So that was what I was thinking kind of when Grant was talking about the bike. I'm like, yeah, the bike is really scary, but like when you think about it, a lot of the track accidents seem to be low sides, and I would rather low side a car than have a car catch on fire.
Yeah.
Or low side a bike.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so do you guys what about the mind games? I think we were talking about this with Jason Owens yesterday. We were over there hanging out with him. I figure you know him. Do you guys, does the fear of failure bother you guys? Like, are you sitting there thinking, son of a bitch, I don't want to be the one, to whatever, screw up, look like an ass, crash a car, do any of that? Or is there a point when that was a big deal for me last year with the Type R. Now, yeah, the Type R was totally a street car, but I was new to being on track in a long, long time. And I felt like this kind of you feel like, oh shit, they're watching me. Like my buddies are watching me, or I'm going to go yeet this thing into a wall and everybody's going to be like, dude, that's that dude from S3 Magazine. He's a freaking idiot. Let's go post about it or whatever. Like, there was a lot of that kind of mental crap that I was worrying about that I really shouldn't even been worrying about, just fear of failure stuff. Do you guys deal with that, or do you get to a point where you're like, whatever, man, full send, we'll see what happens? Like, worst case scenario, there's a tow truck.
I don't think anyone on the team is that mindset of just going out in full send. I think we're cautious, but I will say within the team, it's one thing that I've really liked about the team, because I felt what you're saying the first year we ran.
Yeah.
And then I realized that even when I did poorly and felt like, I brought these guys out to help, and I didn't do them justice.
Right.
They didn't care because they were there to support either way, which is what I was saying at Speedring as well. It didn't matter. We were all there. We had a good time. I do still get that the more the cars develop, and I want to hear Grant's, because Grant's car is now us, going on season 3. Every season we've made huge changes to the car, to both cars. The Subaru gets a sequential. My times got slower after I put the sequential in, and like those things have played real mind games where it's you start checking down the list of here's what Will Young and James Houghton have, and when you look at the list in my Subaru, it also has all those things. Why am I 10 seconds behind? And there's a lot of people don't realize what's in that recipe. That just because the parts are there doesn't mean they work well together. Doesn't mean I know how to drive it yet. And I'm curious because Grant went from no turbo to a turbo, and we had a bunch of issues. Did you feel the same way, Grant? That you have less excuses, I guess, if you don't do well.
Yeah, it's always, well, being a Miata in general, usually they're seen as the ones trying to keep up on track. But really though, there's something to say about stepping through the builds and taking it one step at a time and trying to learn the setup and make it faster what it is, then taking that next step. But all of us being engineers, we're always like, well, we can make this, or I know how to do that, so let's try it out. And I'm excited to see what else I can do to the car, and so we can't stop ourselves. So it ends up turning into these, crazy cars that everybody wants to pitch in and work on, and we made some pretty cool stuff. But there is something to say about, step by step getting. If you put the turbo on, make sure that turbo is working 100% before you start doing something else crazy. But I just think we can't help ourselves.
Dude, that's what I love about Time Attack, though. Like, that's the cool thing about Time Attack. It's not just drivers. It's like drivers and builders and car guys and tuners and all this is ricers, and it's all that kind of stuff in one. Like, the bummer about wheel-to-wheel stuff is, to me, the rules. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like, dang it, you can't do that. But, they'll be like, oh, well, you can't run that engine. Like, yeah, you can. Well, no, you can't run the engine. And that, it's like, well, come on, man, this is a race, isn't it? Yeah, I don't know. I think it's super cool. I've written articles about that. I don't remember which one off the top of my head, but I think it's super cool to watch that happen in Time Attack. I think we're kind of in the glory years and we don't realize it. You know what I mean? It's those early years where like people are fine. The progression is happening fast and there's a lot of just cool stuff happening. And it's like you guys, man, like he's working on his car right now or some car. You know what I mean? like it's going on in privateer type stuff. I mean, I know, a lot of you guys have sponsors of some sort, but it's not like race team stuff yet. I don't know. I think that's what's pretty cool. But where do you think Time Attack's going to go?
So I think Time Attack has like a title kind of thing where, what was it, like 08 or 09 or something when Chris Rado was running the Scion. Like that was a peak in Time Attack, and then it kind of died off for a few years, and then it came back, and I think we have passed the peak, and I think that peak was right around when you had James Houghton and Will Young like back to back breaking records, and then James sells his car and Will's got wrecked, and I think we're going into kind of the trough now. And
you think?
I think it's going to be like the other Subaru behind the screen that is John's. These wild builds are happening, but John's car isn't going to do, I don't expect it to do anything spectacular for a year or two. It's going to take a season to get it figured out, and I know that's not this year.
See, I don't know, Kendall. I don't think you can kind of judge Time Attack as just what are the greatest of the greatest doing. I think you have to look like holistically and saying, would you rather have an era where it's just two titans, or would you have an era where it's a lot of competitive people? Like, do you kind of take growing the community as more important, or just having the absolute greatest of the greatest battling it out? You know what I mean?
Well, like I think that's going to go hand in hand. Because when Rado was doing it, they had Scion supporting the team. Like you actually had, HPD, Honda Performance Development, was helping with some of Will's. And I'm not saying I fully disagree with you, but that brings some fans, and like seeing those crazy times go down brings the following, which then brings people like you to want to invest in their car to become part of it.
I don't know.
And-
The flip
though-
side is that's intimidating. And if you just see regular people out there, it's more inviting to say like, hey, he's just got a Subaru with some bolt-ons and he blows up every week, and I could do that too.
It's
I've
true. Anyone could do that.
I've got a buddy, he works at Yokohama, but like we ride mountain bikes like multiple times a week together. And he has a S13 coupe actually that he ran. He's got an engineer's mind, you know, and he's built this thing in a hell of a car in his own basement, but he can't compete with obviously the Houghtons and all those, you know what I mean? Like, so the sport is kind of leaving him behind, and he's like frustrated with that because he's like, God dang it. I put all my freaking money and all this brain power and time into building something, and by the time I do, you know, I break at an event or it doesn't go well, or it does, but then everybody else has gotten exponentially faster, and he's like, I'm almost at that point, man, where it's like, why don't I just have a fun car that I can go drive on track? You know, and what am I chasing is his thing. And so, I get that side of it where you feel like, okay, now the men are really getting separated from the boys, and it's becoming a point where it's like, well, I can't even play at that level anymore. You know, like there was a sweet spot, but like that I get it, where that's kind of getting, you know, the gap's getting too large. But
I mean, that kind of goes back to your previous question of like, what's the biggest hurdle to get over? And I feel like, for me at least, it's getting in your own way of, you know, you spend all this time and all your money. And like the hardest part for me is like, I haven't been on track. And sometimes I'll be in the garage thinking like, I've spent so much time and so much money, and I haven't even driven this thing on track. And like, and it sounds silly, but like, you start to question like time allocation. And that's to me is the biggest thing. It's like, I get very anal and zeroed in on like, oh, is this fuel line going to rub against the chassis over time and you know, break through? Like, once my car is running, it's running. I'm not the type of guy that is, you know, oh, I got the car running, but now I got to rewire it, redo my fuel lines. I'm like, no, once it's running, it is now at the stage where it's running. I don't like to take shit apart and redo it. So like, but you start getting to the point where my biggest fear is getting to mid-Ohio at the end of July and saying, why didn't I spend my time doing X? Why didn't I spend my time? Like, I'm not really worried about what other people are going to think, because I've kind of gotten the opinion of some people that do more legit racing than I do, and I'll show them like my welds on my cage or my wiring or whatever, and they'll be like, dude, have you been to one of these events? Like, it's fine. But coming from FSAE, like, you read the rule book, and Grant can attest to this, like, the judges grill you on like, if your shit's off by 1/4 of an inch, they'll be like, oh no, this doesn't pass rules.
Really?
Yeah. And like, I'm in that mindset where I'll go to these events and I'm reading the Grid Life and the SSCA events, and I'm like, oh my God, if my cage doesn't have this node perfect, they're going to be mad and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, then you talk to people who have been there and they're like, nah, man, they don't even look at it.
Could you talk a little bit more about the FSAE? Because I know Grant kind of went through that in college.
So it's pretty much a collegiate competition across the United States, where it's colleges build these little single-seater open-wheel cars, and there's this huge rule set. And then you go to these they have kind of large competitions out in the western part of the United States, and then the eastern one is in Michigan, and they actually have one in Canada. But pretty much you have all the like big wigs from the big three and Honda, Ford, GM, all these engineers that know their stuff come and just grill you on why you built your car the way you did and why you think it's better than doing it a different way. And it's crazy intense, because they say, well, where's your data to prove that? How'd you simulate, or what does your test data show that why that's better? So I see where David's coming from, where you get in that mindset from that type of motorsport to where you get into this like hobbyist time attack culture where you're like, well, why'd you do that? And they're like, well, I had some extra wood laying around, so I made a splitter and I wanted to see if it works.
We'll see, we were drinking some beer and we figured.
I mean, that's one thing.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say that's one thing that I've like kind of takes up a lot of my time is it's realizing like, all right, a lot of things in the performance aftermarket are like monkey see, monkey do. Like if you ask someone, why do you have an aeromotive pressure regulator on a car that you're running stock pressure? Why don't you just use the factory fuel pressure regulator? Oh, I don't know. I always see fuel systems that have it, so I bought. It's like there's just a lot of like status quo, monkey see, monkey do stuff, and on top of that, it just seems like when you come from where Grant and I came from, and I'm sure once I get through my first year, I'll be done with this, but like sometimes you look at someone's car and it is how it is or made of the material or the tubing that it's made of because that's what they had in their garage. Yeah. And you have to factor that in. And like, I can't tell you the amount of hours I've spent just making a fuel system. Like my fuel rail will have a line on it where the hose end is a part of the fuel rail because I thought like, oh, that's one less. If I don't have a hose end that goes to an adapter that goes to the fuel rail, that's one less place to leak fuel and kill me. So that's like, you get into this mindset and like, just placing an order from Summit for fuel system takes you 4 hours because you're like, oh, well, what about this fitting? What about that fitting?
Yeah.
And at some point, you just have to say, fuck it. It's 90% all right.
Yeah.
So coming from the collegiate stuff, would you rather what you're doing now be more like that, or do you enjoy the kind of hobbyist, what you have laying around the garage kind of thing? Is that more relieving? Do you feel more comfortable there, or did you like the stress of the collegiate competition?
The structure, really.
I think a lot of it is. I think a lot of engineering is very control driven. Like not really. I guess you could say a little ego driven. Of like, it's hard for me to buy parts if I can't find a spec sheet. Even if it's irrelevant, I just want to know what it does, want to know how many amps this pump's going to pull, want to size my wire properly. And it's all this stuff where you realize like, all right, if I take a breath and ground myself a little bit, I'll realize that seat time is more important than this. And I know that. But when that's a part of your whole education and a part of your whole, like my whole role in society is to be the person to question, like, could we make this better? Could we make this more cost effective? Could we improve something? It's hard not to carry that over into your hobbies, even if I really do think that there's a fine balance of like engineering and being organized about how you go about a task, but also having the wisdom to say, I know that putting more time in this isn't going to yield any additional benefit.
Yeah.
Right.
That's insane.
I really enjoy both aspects because I like, there is something to say about closed rulebook racing where you have these set of rules and you have to abide by them. And that really sets apart the teams that put in the test time and figured out how to do something with this chassis that no one else figured out how to do. But on the other hand, like the FSAE thing, we designed and built our suspension and chassis from scratch. Like we picked our points in space and built this car. And so there's also a kind of a cool feeling that comes along with that because there's no other car like that in the world, which is pretty cool to think about, really. But again, there's something to say when you have a field of 40 Miatas or 40 Corvettes, and there's this one guy that's 2 seconds faster. Everybody wants to know what he did. He figured something out.
Yeah,
I don't know. Go ahead.
I wish I had that kind of brain, man. I really am envious of that kind of stuff. Like that's just not me, man. It's just not me. I'm just like, what do we have? Yeah, that'll work. We'll make that work. I don't want to go to the store. We'll just make it work. It's like.
I'm curious, David, because I haven't actually asked to dive in. What is your job? Is it development? Is it product engineering? Is it? I'm just curious.
I'm a product/project engineer. So there's only about 20 people who work at my company, and like the majority of them are engineers. So that's kind of why you haven't heard of our ECUs, because we don't have a big marketing department. Yeah. So as a large engineering and manufacturing source, we just search for other companies that want to, a bigger company who's mostly a branding company that could sell electronics.
Right. Private label.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. It's kind of interesting to hear your thought process on engineering, because I'm almost like the polar opposite, and I see that in your build versus how I'm building, because it's kind of the opposite of a spec sheet. Because in product development,
we're actually kind of looking at the difference between our builds, because you were taking the engine back out of the car to fix something you fucked up.
Okay, for the record, this one was not my mess up. This was a learning process and management skills and delegating tasks. But what I was trying to say is, in product development, you're looking to make something that doesn't exist, so there's no spec sheet. So that is all I do all day. Like, that's foreign to me, to have a place to look. So that, I don't know. It's just an interesting way to see the difference in your daily habits, I guess.
I think a big part of what I do is like contextual. So like if I'm building something for like a nitrous company, I know that it's going to be someone who may not be as, it's going to be a drag racer, someone who's probably not like in touch with computers, but they know the minutia of like what they needed to do. So you have to kind of have a design language in like your touchscreen or app or your PC program to say like, all right, I need this nitrous controller. I don't need like a bunch of different, very complicated engineering language type things, but like I know what they know. Like they know words like bump box, or like they know words like watt box, or you just have to set it up in an environment that's intuitive for its purpose. I don't know. That kind of wants to segue my mind into getting back to Jonathan. You were kind of talking about that you were kind of amazed of the thought process, but I think the other end of the thought process for me is like answering why you're doing something. So like I can get so down this engineering rabbit hole of like overthinking a shitty 240.
Right.
But then at some point you're like, why am I doing this? Like, why are we out racing? Are we really out at Time Attack to break records, or are we out to just enjoy it? Or are we out? You start questioning like, am I here to break records, or am I here to enjoy it? Or am I here to do both and interface the two? So like, I don't necessarily think that the engineering mindset's the best way to approach grassroots racing.
It's really interesting you bring that up, because I've seen some interviews with, the James Houghton or the Will I Young, and I hear them like they are chasing milliseconds, for months of work to get those few seconds. And I'd be really interested to see where that transition is, because a lot of these people who are chasing those seconds right now, they were they were just out there to have fun. It's really interesting to kind of like find out where that transition is when you get like super competitive, where you're doing months and months of work to chase down a few seconds.
I feel like it's immediate. Like I know Hunter can relate. Like the first thing we had to do with that Type R was drive it across the country for a half-mile event. So we were driving from Georgia to California to get our ass handed to us by everybody.
Yeah.
Because they're going 180, 90 miles an hour, and we're going like 133. But it didn't matter. All we wanted was 134. In the whole world, I would have spent anything at that given time to get the next mile an hour. You know what I mean? Like we were, it's just funny because we got there and we're like, whatever, man, let's just have a good time. That's all we're going to do. And then after like a couple of passes, you're like, all right, where's VP Race? And we're going to get, like we're trying to do what we can, starting to pull stuff out of it, anything you can do to try and that number. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
if you go watch the series of the Type R on the day that we put the VP Racing fuel on the Type R, I think I hit 133 miles an hour. We were the slowest car at the event. However, I went 133 miles an hour, which was 2 miles an hour faster than Wooly or Mike. And it was the biggest celebration I think I've ever had.
Listen, the crowd got hyped too, because we were super consistent all day long. I mean, every time it passed, it was 31, 31, 32, 31, whatever. And once it hit that like top right, everybody lost their shit on the crowd.
Because we were running dozen times to everybody else's one time. We would just pull back in and go back out and do it again, man. Like we were just running
And
it
if I
all day.
remember correctly, I think Wooly was the only one who was like officially registered. So no matter who was driving, like, I on the intercom was like, "Here comes Wooly again," and I look next to me. I'm like, "Wait, he's right." Okay, no.
I remember that. I remember like, here's Wooly for his 100th run of the day. 130. Wait, 133. And it was like a big thing.
Yeah, and like you can see, like, because like our whole team was sitting in the VIP booth with the other racers, either the racers themselves or their families or friends or whatever. And so when we hit that 133, everybody that was with S3, we had some friends come out from LA or whatever. They all jumped up and were just yelling. And all the other racers, entourage was just looking like, why? It's 133 miles an hour. My minivan does that.
Yeah, well, screw them, because we drove it back home to Georgia too. So there's something to be said for that.
And Super Street trailer. Let me just say that. Yeah. So Super Street was doing the same thing. Like our Type R was a project with Motivicity, and Super Street was doing the same thing. So we drive from Georgia to California in a Type R loaded down, and they trailer from California to California with their Evo on the back. I'm like, come on, man. But we did beat the Super Street Evo. That's all I cared about that day. We sure did.
So we were the second slowest.
We should have been racing for pinks.
Yeah.
So to circle back, you had mentioned at what like the tipping point for, I guess, seat time versus wrenching time.
Yeah.
I think Grant went, and this is going to be really funny to see David go through this, because he thinks he is like innocent of or going to avoid this. To build it once and never touch it again, it's going to fall apart, David. It doesn't matter what you build. Grant had the same mindset. It may not be the engine in his car, but it's the transmission, it's the rear diff. It happens. It's racing. And it seems like the higher you go up the chain, the more they loosen the rule set to go, street mod, track mod, unlimited. The ratio of seat time to garage time gets more and more skewed. And that's kind of why I was telling Grant, let's push you back down. Don't keep modding it. It's kind of a track mod car where it's at. Keep it there and refine. That's why I've pushed David, build for track mod. Don't go crazy. It's just, I think, the nature of the beast that the more you modify, the less time you're going to get to drive it.
Kendall, I got to say, for my situation, you're technically wrong because I haven't driven it. So any amount of seat time is infinitely better than what I have.
That's true.
I love to watch engineers argue. They're like, I just made a diagram real quick as to why you're wrong.
I wish you luck. It is the worst. I've been there where you kind of come out of the garage. The Colorado event that I went to, that broke me. That completely changed my view on racing. Was to spend 6 months. I rented the local airport to go test the sequential and the new electronics and dial it. I rented a dyno when I got to Colorado. I like literally skipped events to prepare for it. We pulled the car out of the trailer. The clutch exploded and blew the bell housing out, and it broke the engine, the transmission, all in one shot. And I didn't even get the lap. And that was the first ever event my parents ever showed up to.
Oh my
God. Oh no.
So not that's. I mean, that does not happen every day, but that's how it goes. It sucks sometimes.
It's idiotic.
It's part of the hobby.
What I found
sometimes is sometimes you sit back and you go, "What the hell are we doing here?" Though, right? Like,
that is actually, I spent so much money. I should have put it towards my mortgage, not like broken race car parts. And,
like the three of you could have like rental properties at different beaches. It's just
you're breaking rule number 1: never add up how much you spent.
I had a sheet and I gave up on that. That was bad. But I didn't get into it to quit, I guess, and that is what I learned out of it. I never pushed harder after that event. Road Atlanta was like 3 weeks later, and Grant didn't think I was coming, and then there I was. Car was running. That was, I think, the most seat time I ever got immediately after that event. I don't know. Both mentally tasking, physically tasking, time demanding, but I think it makes you grow as a person to realize what you're capable of.
Yeah.
And what you're not capable of even,
And how to handle devastation without complete come apart.
My parents, that was, I think, the first time they've ever seen me completely blow a fuse. And they couldn't, they were wondering, say something. And I'm just dead silent and not react. I don't know how to describe it. It's almost like in a movie when a parent loses their child and they just seem normal. They're just really quiet. That was me. Because I lost my child that day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The pressure's super on because my first event, my parents are coming down from Cleveland, and we're in Cincinnati, and my girlfriend's parents in Cincinnati are also going to come. My girlfriend's dad is an ex-fighter pilot, so I feel like if I fuck up anything, he'll be like, "You didn't prepare for that."
How could you let this happen?
So do y'all all live by each other? Kendall, you live in another state, don't you?
Yeah,
close to us.
Yeah, I'm near Asheville, North Carolina. So
shit.
I mean, this is totally off topic, but Jesse, there's a Revolution concert here on Wednesday. You should come up here for it.
Yo!
I haven't been to a concert in a while, and I'm going alone right now, and I'm going to get real drunk.
F me, right? I only live a couple hours away, and I got dreads. Don't ask me.
Come on.
Oh, let's fucking road trip. I'll come from Alabama. I don't give a damn, okay?
Hey, I was more stoked when John said he mountain biked. I'm like, let's get together at Kendall's.
Okay, wait. I'm going to ruin the podcast a little bit, but come on, John. We got race cars and mountain bikes in this garage.
Well, I saw the bikes and I didn't want to get off topic, but
mine. We're gonna tie this into racing because all my bikes are e-bikes, so they haul ass. They got motors in them.
Oh damn!
And my logo's on them. It's pretty sweet.
Make fun of those kind of bikes where I'm from.
Come up here. You won't make fun of them once you ride them.
I rode one for the first time on Saturday. They're really fun when you're climbing and just doing on flat, but taking them downhill, it feels like, I think you can assume, it feels like you're riding a bike with 50 pounds under it.
Oh yeah.
You can't do anything.
It's a tank.
I've ridden one just really quickly, kind of behind the bike shop, and yeah, I get it. I mean, it's fun because you can kind of give it a little goose, when you're coming out of a corner. It's cool, man. It's cool. So when's Revolution?
Y'all just came out. Go ahead.
We're not talking about cars anymore. When's Revolution coming?
It's supposed to be on Wednesday, and I was just listening to them the other day, and I go every year to that concert, and I was like, yeah, well, pandemic, I doubt they're touring. I'm going to look it up. And then they're at Salvage Station in Asheville on Wednesday, and I had such a blast last year.
Yo, I can't believe that you're a reggae guy.
Dude, I can't believe, I'm serious now. I was talking about rental properties. You could get rid of that car. Asheville's a serious kind of Airbnb spot. You get a place and have that thing rented out. You could fund a little front-wheel drive Civic.
Or just put the Slumdog on Toro or whatever it's called.
Well, we're going to... I don't know if you saw the pictures. I had built out my shed that's on my property. It's a 20 by 15 foot. It's a huge shed. I built it into a mini house to Airbnb, and then the pandemic happened.
Oh, yeah. Good timing.
So, yeah, perfect timing.
Kicks you in the nuts, man.
But I have a guest house, so if you come up here, there's a place to craft.
Oh, for real?
Oh, that is so sick.
Shoot. Are you into Jeeps?
You trying to go? Yeah, are we going to have a Jeeping crew now?
Well, I mean, we have a Jeeping crew. and we go up to like North Georgia mountains and that whole area where like North Carolina and Tennessee and North Georgia come together. Shoot, you could come on down and we could play.
What
Time.
What kind of Jeeps you talking about? Because my good buddy builds rock bouncers.
Well, see, there you go again, going too far. Like, no, you get a Jeep.
You don't have a 900 horsepower LS in your Jeep?
No,
We have a buddy that has one.
Nope. We just go out there with our little gas station taquitos and, man.
Little pigs in a blanket, my little Mountain Dew. I'm good to go.
I love how we're just all broing out now. Like, this isn't even a podcast anymore. We're just hanging out.
Well, Revolution will do that.
Yeah.
Listen, I see Revolution on September 22nd.
No, I swear.
I see it Wednesday, September 22nd at 6 with Steel Pulse, the green, and Kismet.
While he's figuring that out, am I mistaken, or did I just see y'all release your own big brake kit? Right?
Oh yeah. Grant's got one. I've got one. We're doing them out of 6061 billet aluminum. So it's kind of similar to the StopTech stuff, but with slight tweaks to it in terms of piston size and stuff for each chassis and rotor sizes.
So how did that come about? How did you get inspired to make your own big brake kit? And do you plan to sell them, or are you bringing them to market?
Yeah, so they're half. This set I really want to put a season on and test them. I had done a brake kit. Corvette brakes for Subarus where you modify and put the 6-piston C6 Z06 calipers. That's what Slumdog has run up till now. And I've sold a good few of those sets, but I don't know. I thought I could do better because that's not designing from scratch,
Right.
It's modifying something on the market, and it actually works really well because you can fit that set with 17-inch wheels, a 6-piston brake kit, which is rare. But no, I wanted to step up our game a little bit, and Grant's going to be really probably the first one to push them. So we'll see how they do on the Miata, and I had to have this huge sheet to see what braking force a StopTech kit would get, and the OEM stuff, and then the new one, and what master to size, and if you do dual masters, what pedal travel, and I don't know.
That's
it's
exciting.
kind of nerding out. It's nerding out with the engineering stuff. The Excel sheet's almost more impressive than the actual brakes themselves.
That's so cool.
The cool thing was
That's wild.
Cool thing was the flexibility because the Miatas, they're all 4-lug, but Kendall will whip up a 5-lug design for the Miata that we're switching to. So it was
really okay,
a no-brainer.
Why don't you guys just build your own car company?
It's kind of what it's turning into, right?
Like, more real.
On its way. It takes time and money, and how I was getting on here late today was like, I don't know, I would say a godsend. I'm at the point where I have a shop now, and I got the dyno in there, and I'm trying to epoxy the floors and paint the walls and do all this stuff and get the shop nice so I can move out of what I'm sitting in now, because I'm like, I got cars on top of me at this point. But it's money, and I can only do so much at a time. And today was a weird one where I had John call me to give me the list of stuff he wants to do with this unlimited car, and another guy come in who wants to like completely ball out on a WRX and with blank checks. And in this industry, it's really surgy like that, where now I feel like I've got some money to play with. Let's get some stuff going. Yeah. But 4 hours ago, I was freaking out on how I was going to pay rent.
Yeah.
That's the car industry.
It's the car industry. And the longer I've been in it and getting reputations going and running cars on the racetrack and building stuff, I could not even imagine sitting where I'm sitting right now 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I can't imagine where I'll be 2 years from now.
Right.
So who knows?
Exactly.
Maybe it'll be a full car company, and I've talked to David about this, I got a dyno. David's an ECU guy. And so is Nick Mitchell. You know, I got 2 tuners on the team. Let's start making some money.
Yeah.
That'd be sick. So is that, I was going to kind of ask like what the end goal is, you know, for y'all with the time attack thing. Like I always wonder that about time attack. Like where do you think it's going to go? Like what do you think the end goal is? Do you guys just do it for the moment and because you love doing it and because you're, you know, it's the adrenaline and trying to make it all work? Or do you have dreams of professional wheel-to-wheel racing, or do you have dreams of time attack becoming, you know, something that could be a full-time career? Or like we're talking about, y'all just go, hey man, between the 4 of us, we can make a damn car, you know? And like, I don't know, where do you see it going in like a perfect world?
I want to hear David and Grant first before I answer that one.
Grant, you're up.
I'm up.
Yeah.
I don't know. Mostly for me, time attack and the building of the cars is I work full time at Honda, so you go to work every day, and I'm paid to do this job every day. But the engineering brain is always stir crazy, so you're sitting there, and this is kind of my release from the professional world, and this is a hobby that you get to enjoy. With your friends and friends who become your family, and you show up at the track with them every weekend and try and push the car. And, if it breaks, everybody, says, well, we'll rebuild it and get out there for the next event. But if it succeeds, you're there together as a team. That's something special that, we all share, is that there is some teams out there, but, it's uncommon in time attack. Usually it's onesie, twosie teams out there, and that's awesome. But we have something pretty special, I feel like, here, where we have multiple cars running, and we're all running for each other and together. So that's what kind of gets me out in the garage and gets that car to the event, is that enjoyment.
Yeah.
I feel like, I don't know, I'm kind of in the performance racing industry, and my company treats me really well, and I enjoy the work. So like I wouldn't really want to leave to do any like kind of tuning or service industry related thing, just because I feel like there's a lot of like just personality, like media management, like keeping your name clear on social media and all that. Just like, I'd rather make products for other people, because then I can just really focus on engineering the best product. And like, as far as making, like being a race shop or something, I get a little concerned that like, if building race cars was my job, that then it would become work. And I kind of like the separation.
It does. But all the guys that own race shops ain't racing.
No, I mean, look at Kendall. But
he's muted. He can't say shit.
It's accurate.
But I don't know.
This is why I had him answer first.
I do feel like we have an interesting team dynamic, because we don't actually directly like wrench on each other's car all the time, because Grant's up in Dayton, he's down in the Carolinas, and I'm in Cincinnati. So like, I tuned Grant's car on the dyno and I wired his car, and then it's really just a lot of like pinging knowledge and advice off each other that most people in the time and tech community, I feel like, would be open to telling you. But I don't know, I'm kind of like still at the noob stage where I'm afraid to ask a dumb question on social media, so I never post. But then like, when people see my work and stuff, they're like, oh dude, you should post about that. I'm like, dude, even if it's the best work in the world, I'd still just won't want to put it out there yet. But I'm sure with a little more years under my belt, I'll get a little more like acquainted with the world and be willing to kind of put my words out there. But I'm always afraid some other individual is going to come out and like, oh, well, technically you're supposed to tighten this fitting down in this manner. And I'm like, fuck, I was wrong.
I mean, I think just statistically, you're probably smarter than 99% of the people in this whole automotive aftermarket. So it's not going to happen much. Like, if somebody calls you out, that's like 1 or 2%ers there.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't stress that.
You're going to want to hear from.
Yeah, right. And they're probably going to be smart enough to respect and not just call you out.
I also feel that maybe after my first years in the books, I'll be more like involved in the community. But I almost feel like I shouldn't say anything yet because like, who the fuck am I? Like, I'm just, I'm a nobody at this point. Even if I'm technically savvy and like, I understand the proper way to build something, it's still like, no, I haven't put in my time. Like, I haven't shown up and done the thing. And until I've done the thing, I feel like I don't have I haven't earned the privilege to be a part of the conversation yet.
Fake it till you make it.
Hey, that's what I'm
David.
doing.
David, you're the best. There's no one that compares. I'm going to sell the shit out of you for Dino Time. You're the best.
Look, man, if you pay me $150,000, I'll come down there.
I don't know. I don't know about that.
Where did you say you are? Are you in Cincinnati or Cleveland?
I'm in Cincinnati. I grew up in Cleveland.
Okay. All right, that's cool. Yeah, Asheville's like one of my spots, man. I could grow old in Asheville.
I'm gonna grow
You
old
won't
in
have to
Asheville.
pay me that much, but I'll mess all your crap up real bad.
You know, and then I can pull engines after you work on them.
Yeah.
After he breaks them.
This is kind of one of my learning processes where I let someone else do some stuff, and they forgot to put some parts in this engine.
Really?
Oh man.
Yes.
Important.
Yeah. Yeah. Valve seals are kind of important.
You know what? Hold on. I'm going to stop you. He keeps blaming this mystery man, but about a year ago, we were trying to get his car started for the first time on the ECU that I wired in. I didn't have time to start at my shop. I gave it back to him, and it's just blowing through the intake. We're trying to get the sink and everything to be timed properly, and then he goes, "Oh, my coils." He plugged in his coil connectors backwards, so he had his cylinders all mixed up. And then he goes, "Oh, it was the other guy that did it. I didn't do that."
What asshole did this?
Okay. First of all, same person. I should.
No.
So
Did
I
you
told
lose
you
him?
guys that I started building my car when I was like 17, 18. So I did a lot of stuff when I really didn't. I like learned everything on this car because like I didn't grow up in a car family at all. And whenever my friends come across something in my 240 that's kind of jacked up, we call like 18-year-old me previous owner.
That's so funny.
Yeah, there are a lot of things where like, who did this? And I was like, I don't know, previous owner.
Oh, man.
That's funny.
That is
I'm gonna
pretty
start
good.
using that.
I know,
start
I'm
doing
gonna
that.
steal that too.
That's probably not appropriate for the podcast, but the rolling chassis analogy is also a great one.
What's the
I'll let
Kendall-
David explain it if he feels that that's appropriate.
Kendall
Hey,
has
bring
terrible,
it on, man.
Kendall has terrible dating advice. He says, I like women who are kind of put together. Like, I don't like high maintenance girls.
Whoa! No, you said you
No.
the first woman who's remotely okay. I said I've dated a few rolling chassis before. They got pretty bodies, but there's not much else going on there.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Man.
Look, and then you could get a sleeper though. You know, not really a looker, but there's some good shit under the hood.
A girl that's just really good at bed.
No, well, maybe. I don't know. It's up for interpretation.
Oh man.
So
Write that down,
kind of-
Hunter. Use both of those.
He's like,
kind
okay,
of,
Kurt.
We're still trying to find Hunter a good, wholesome woman.
yeah.
She's not in Vegas.
Hey, put that on your.
She's not
She's not.
Vegas.
She's not.
Looking for a
There.
roller.
Look, they're
Garage kept.
straight body, no bondo, no hail damage.
All right.
There's
So
find him a girl in Asheville.
I want to take it back to how we met the Mechanical Advantage boys. Well, actually, this is my first time meeting David. I didn't even know David existed until like I signed.
I did because I read Jesse's article in
There it
my
is.
magazine. Yeah, I was like, oh, okay.
But
That's why I wanted him on here. Get a face to the name.
So, what was it? It was Grid Life Midwest last year, right? Me and Jesse, we had an assignment to walk around. We got sent Scott from Koenig Wills, which we just did an interview with this most previous podcast. He sent, us a list. He was like, hey, go walk around and interview these dudes. These dudes on Koenigs, right? So we got a long list of people. Jackie Ding, Sally was running Koenigs at the time. Sally McNulty, Devin with the Turbo K S2000, all these different cars. And then at the time, I had a Miata that I was working to K swap. Never happened.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
Well,
never happened. So don't.
He was like, oh, this is expensive. Like, I'm screwed.
Probably not going to do this anymore.
But so on the list, it says Grant Walker, Turbo K Miata. And I was like, and dude, this is the first time me and Jesse have ever done anything interview style like this. This was brand new to us. We had an idea, but if we're being honest, we had no clue what we were doing. We're just kind of figuring it out.
Yeah.
We're just kind of figuring it out as we go. We're super nervous. And then, so we're just having to Scott gave none of these people heads up. We're cold rolling up to people. So, me and Jesse in neon pineapple pants with this giant, me, the idiot I am, we roll up. And sure enough, we meet Grant Walker, and we couldn't get our microphone to work. We spent 15 to 25 minutes with Grant, just this is not working. And finally, and Grant's just cracking up the whole time because, you guys can tell, he's a little quiet, shy guy. So I'm like, we look like a fucking idiot in front of this dude. This is going absolute. What kind of media company are we? I am totally crashing myself. And so, ended up doing the interview. It went well. Koenig never used it, probably for good reason, but we did it.
Because you never got the mic working.
But since then, Grant and the Mechanical Advantage boys, we've just kind of been friends ever since. So I'm curious, what was your initial thoughts of me and Jesse when we walked up to you that day?
I don't want to hear this.
Initial, I don't know. I mean, you guys were obviously. I didn't know how many times you'd used the microphone, but you were giving it your 100%.
We ended up trashing that microphone,
Yeah.
and I just got some extension wire with my dead cat microphone.
But no, it was more. I mean, it was that initial interview, and then every time we'd see each other at the event, walking around, whatever, it'd just be a big old, "Hey man, what's going on?" And I think that's what it kind of turned into, and then eventually it's Nap City at Grid Life South.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Yeah, if you watch our what was it, the hottest points of Grid Life or something like that, we did a video, and in it about halfway through, we were finding people to interview and talk to about Grid Life, and we were like, our boy Grant, and our boy Kendall, that's who we got to go talk to. So we're in the Type R. We're so stoked to roll up to our boys from Mechanical Advantage, right? And we roll up, nobody's there. The cards are there, but nobody's there. Man, where?
Yeah, we noticed.
Jesse taps me on the shoulder and goes, "Turn around." Grant slumped, not drunk or anything, but he is napping hard, dude, just passed out, laid back in his lawn chair. And we rolled up, we walked up to him, we filmed him. I got some stuff, dude. He was snoozing. So if you go check out that video on YouTube, you'll see Grant and probably the best nap of his life.
It was so hot and so shaded.
Yeah, but I think that was probably the worst nap of his life because I'm pretty sure he had given up on the weekend because his gearbox grenaded. Yeah. And that was the screw it, I'm going to bed kind of now. Like I've stayed
David,
up for
this is what
3
you have
months
to look
straight.
forward to.
What gearbox are you running? BMW?
Yeah, BMW 5-speed, the ZF.
5-speed. Okay. I thought the BMWs were a 6-speed that you used with K Miata. No, they're 5s?
There is a 6-speed you can run in the car, but I had a friend that he kind of brings in cheap BMWs and parts them out, and he had like a couple of these sitting on his garage floor, and that was the easy choice. Gave them to me for a pretty good deal. So,
Hell yeah. That's
cool.
cool.
All right, guys. Well, I think we've been going long enough. It's been really fun talking to you all once again. Thanks, David, Grant, Kendall. If you guys are watching the video, you will have seen Kendall knee deep this entire time in a Subaru.
Subarus,
shout out.
aka job security.
Yeah.
if you've learned anything, that's what we've learned.
And
Shout
engine's
out to the
almost
stack
out.
of
Oh.
Shout out to the stack of Konings in the background too.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's
did you
it.
actually see those?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we can see them.
It's not like I placed them there or anything for this video. You'll
You'll
never know.
Shout out. So where can we find y'all online? Website, Instagram?
Oh, yeah, Pornhub. maracing.net, and then we got Grant as Mechanical Advantage Miata on Instagram, and then myself with the main page, Mechanical Advantage Racing. And David, what was your Instagram? Do we have your?
Yeah, I
Tell
gotta
me
make
it's
one
like
of
still
those one of these
something
days.
from high school.
No, I don't have
Be
an
like
Instagram.
DSM player.
You don't have Instagram. What are you?
You know what? After tonight, I'm gonna get off here and I'm gonna make an Instagram.
Don't.
Please.
Don't.
Make
You
an
can have
Instagram.
mine. Just
I-
take mine.
You can have
Yeah,
mine.
hey, honestly, hey
I'll
guys,
give you the
do I need to make a dedicated social media profile for my car?
No, you can.
Oh, you mean a car domain?
Is that how it goes?
No, I don't have.
I don't
I
think
did
so.
at one point. I had a separate page for my boring ass Focus ST when I was like first in college, and then I was like, "This is stupid. Why am I doing this? Nobody cares about this white cord."
Guys, check out my white Focus.
Yeah, completely stock.
Do you have the
Sick.
SVT tattoo on your calf like every other high school dropout?
Dude.
I should. I'm gonna go get it tomorrow just because you said that.
Thank God I never got a tattoo in college because it would have been the Japanese little kanji or whatever for Mitsubishi.
I'll never forget the
Are you
first
coming at me? What the hell?
I'm so attacked right now.
the first meme I ever saw was it was a picture of a Neon SRT4 and it said the official car of the high school dropout.
Oh,
Damn.
shots
That hits a little
fired.
too close to home. I never had
But
that.
yeah,
I'm gonna.
It's close.
podcast is to make an Instagram. Otherwise, how are we supposed to maintain our friendship that we just made?
And
I feel like
you
we've
can
made
just
a
look up
connection
you could
here.
just look up my name, David Otterbury, on Facebook, like an old boomer.
David Otter.
Otterbox.
OTTOBRE. Nickname
Otterbox. He doesn't stop talking. He just keeps going and going.
David,
Um,
right now.
on the note of like the 5 cars under $5,000 that
Yeah.
not all of our stuff got used. I'm really bummed because my top pick was a PT Cruiser. I really want to see someone build one of those for Time Attack.
Yeah.
Oh,
PT
man,
Cruiser
now I know why
RT.
you didn't get used.
Yeah, think about one of those as an unlimited car. Like if someone just went all out on a PT Cruiser and then it like beat Willow Young, how would that change your mind about racing? Like it would
Talk
flip
about
the whole
rubbing
world
everybody's
upside down.
dick through the dirt. Yeah.
Wasn't there a PT Cruiser at Neverlift?
Yes, there was,
yes,
and it
and it was-
actually won the front wheel drive class.
I think it was doing like 167 miles an hour or something. Because it got beat by Miles Kerr, the Integra dude, and he was running like 180 something that weekend, I think. And I remember the guy going, "Let's not overlook this freaking PT Cruiser that just ran 167 miles an hour." Yeah,
It's a killer car.
I used to have one, man.
I'm-
They're bad. I had a 5-speed.
Slapping his knee for a PT Cruiser.
Did it have a the turbo 2.4 in it?
Dude, I could not afford that. I had a 5-speed factory, no AC. It was a brand new $8,900 PT Cruiser because when we got the magazine, I had a DSM. So it broke, like the week I got the magazine because it loved me. And I had no money. When I say I had no money, shut up, y'all. He hadn't heard the story. Do you think everybody listens to every podcast we make? Jesus. Do you think people that run for president never say the same thing on the campaign trail? I was poor to where you look at the store brand box macaroni, you go, how many do I really need? So I ended up with the $8,000 PT Cruiser because I needed a car. And I owned it for like 6 years. And now I don't feel like I can talk about it anymore because they're sitting there. Back seats come out. It's great. It's a perfect car. It's a bad rap.
You should have never got rid of it. I don't know why you got rid of it. You only paid out $8,000.
I hated that car. Are you serious? How the hell are you going to own a tuner magazine and drive a PT Cruiser?
Hey,
that's why you should have made it into an unlimited car and beat up some people with it. And they would have been like, dude, this guy has a car magazine, and then you publish all your articles about how that's like the build.
It was silver with gold XXRs. It looked like an igloo.
Igloo. That's perfect. I love it. All right, we got to cut this. We're pushing 2 hours again. These are supposed to be 45 minutes, but we're having a blast. We're hanging out with our buddies. Thank you very much, Mechanical Advantage Racing, for hanging out with us. We look forward to seeing your cars on the track this season with the Grid Life crew. But other than that, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, and by the way, you guys don't have to hang up. Every time that we've filmed a podcast and ended it, everybody immediately hangs up and we have to call them back. You don't have to hang up. We're just ending it. But anyways, thank you very much for watching. We will see you next time.